Welcome in. It is the Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. However you get your podcast, we always appreciate it. Could be via our YouTube channel, maybe our website, Northside Baseball, maybe Apple Podcasts. However you're tuning in, we're always appreciative of it. Last week, Jason, we had talked about the impending move. We're recording again on a Tuesday for a Wednesday like we typically do. So the Cubs and Guardians have not started their series yet at the time of us recording this. And last week we knew Shota was coming back Thursday against St. Louis, and we were trying to predict the roster move. And we both said like Ben Brown's probably going to get sent down. I had brought up to play devil's advocate, like, hey, maybe they move him to the bullpen and it's Michael Fulmer getting DFA'd. Well, like an hour after we stopped recording, Ben Brown got sent down. And then later on, it was Shota in the week coming back up and Michael Fulmer getting DFA'd by Chicago. So I'm wondering, because one of the topics we're talking about today, and we're not going to start with it, but we're going to do a little trade talk. I know it's been heavily discussed in our Slack channel. Like, hey, trade season's kind of coming upon us. And so we're each going to throw out a couple of options, a couple of ideas maybe for a construction of a trade that the Cubs could make. And I'm hoping, I want to see the Cubs make moves, but I'm hoping if they make a move, it's not an hour or two after we record this and a few hours before it gets published on Wednesday morning. But I have a
They love
sneaky
doing that to
suspicion.
us,
Yeah,
man. Every
something's
time we
going to
do this,
happen.
every time we do this, we'll message each other like an hour afterwards, and the
Something
thing that
happened.
we just talked
Roster
about.
move. Yeah.
Yeah, so we always got to put the good stuff at the end. That might change and lead off with the things that can't. That way you have to listen to us until we get to the point where we're already breaking the news that's already happened.
Yeah, we try to stay out ahead of it. And I, like you said, we just we bury that stuff for later that could come back to rear its head against us for that few hour stretch of when we're done recording. Something that can't change. Like you said, month of June for Chicago, they went 13-13. Just kind of curious where you're at with the Cubs. I feel like there's angst like brewing with a lot of Cubs fans based off what I'm seeing on social media. And I know you always have to take that with a grain of salt. And there's always going to be pockets of every fan base that are always on edge. I do sense that more with the Cubs after they went 500 in the month of June. I would implore people to really zoom out the microscope and look at the whole picture. Still leading the National League Central. I know that lead has thinned out, but you're still leading the NL Central. It wasn't a great month record-wise, but the offense still produced. The bullpen was pretty good. I would say the starting rotation was pretty shaky when I was breaking down the numbers. Jason and I went for some of those bare numbers for some of this. You're going to have stretches like that too, but month of June, the Cubs were first in the majors in home runs, tied for first in stolen bases. That's kind of been the bread and butter recipe for them this year. Get on base, steal bases, hit the long ball. They were 11th in WRC plus, 10th in WOBA. Bullpen ERA was first in the majors for the month of June. The problem was the starter's ERA was 24th. I know the division tightened up. I don't believe anyone, at least you and I didn't. We've talked about this. We didn't think the Cubs were going to like run away with the division and be up 10 or 11 games entering August or September. Like you and I have said all along, like Milwaukee's going to be there. They're going to be the thorn in the side. They're going to be there throughout the year for the Cubs. I'm still not a believer in St. Louis. That's a different discussion for a different day. You finish up the first half here with a struggling Guardians team, the Cardinals, sinking ship in the Minnesota Twins, and then you're in the Bronx for 3 against the Yankees. You have an opportunity to put a nice little bow on the show for the first half. I personally am not like even close to going towards the invisible panic button. I just think it's just one of those months. And when I looked at some of the numbers, I was like, the offense was still fine. The bullpen was in large part still fine. Starters a little more shaky, but we expect the Cubs to add at least one starting arm to the equation at some point. So that's how I took the month of June. Not ideally where you want win-loss wise, but when you dig into some of the numbers, I still think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think they're going to be fine too. You know how I feel about them. If you, they've actually been unlucky on the season according to Pythag. If you go to their Pythag, based on their run differential, they have the third best record in the league, and they're actually a -3, which is a better record than the Los Angeles Dodgers, who I think everybody. When we started the season, would have put them as the de facto best team in baseball, no problems, no questions asked. And according to Pythag, the Cubs are 1 game better than them. They've been 2 games lucky, the Cubs 3 games unlucky. And I don't think we should lose the fact that the Cubs have played a pretty decent record, in terms of like strength of schedule and everything like that. They've played the ninth, according to Baseball Reference, the ninth strongest schedule, and they still have a better record according to Pythag than the Dodgers. Using Fangraphs, I went a different way on how I'm feeling about them. They're in an 85% chance to make the playoffs according to Fangraphs, 60% chance to win the division. I think if you went into the beginning of the season and you said these things are going to happen, Justin Steele's going to miss basically the whole season. Matt Shaw was going to kind of be up and down and not really hit the ground running. If you said that Shota was going to miss a month on top of that as well, I think we would all probably hit the panic button. On the flip side, we're still sitting there with the best Pythag record in the NL. We are looking at, the good playoff odds, a good chance to win the division. The only team over 20% is the Brewers. They're at 23%. So division's been a little bit better record-wise than I think we probably expect talent-wise. I think they've got like 3 or 4 teams over 500 is most of any division. So, I think that's probably a little bit better than we probably expected going into this season. But at the same time, I'm not hitting any panic button. I think when we get into the nitty gritty of baseball, we live it game by game. It's easy to big picture and forget that this isn't like unique to the Cubs. The Cubs didn't have a uniquely bad month. Everybody kind of has those months. We all have them. It's baseball. It's 162 games. So my fear is not really there. They're on a 94 game win pace right now, 94 games. And I think, if we talk beginning of the season talent level, where is this team? I had them pegged for like 88 to 92 wins, like 92, kind of like my real high end. Like things really went well. We're outpacing what I would have expected was the best case scenario. We've had a lot of positives go on. PCA's had a great season. It doesn't matter who the Cubs started catcher. They're all Babe Ruth. Reese McGuire can't stop hitting home runs. Reese McGuire, somebody who nobody even wanted to give a major league contract to. So you've got that. Matthew Boyd, I brought up the fact that maybe he could be an all-star. I don't know if you caught it on the broadcast the other day, but Boog and JD were talking about that. So thanks for listening, Boog and JD. I'll take the credit for that one a couple weeks ago. But like these are things that I don't think we thought were going to happen. So I'm feeling really good about where the team's at right now. I know they went 13-13. They had a really rough month. I know a lot of people are going to talk about their inability to hit against left-handed pitching, and to a degree, I get that. But when the lefties that you're facing for the entire month are like Skubal and Framber Valdez, and like the worst lefty the Cubs really faced was Matthew Liberatore, who's like top 20 this year in a lot of his peripherals. Like, yeah, of course you're going to kind of struggle against lefties for a little bit. I'm not. I think these are fixable things, and we'll talk later when it comes to trade talk and, where I think, I would probably focus that that trade talk in. But no, I think I'm feeling pretty good about where we're at. I didn't expect to be here with the things that have happened. I feel positive about where they're going to go. When we get to the trade talk, we're going to talk about Jim Bowden. I don't know if you saw it, but Jim Bowden thought that the Cubs were going to try to win the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And, listen, it's Jim Bowden, and you can take it what it's worth. But I think what we're hearing from everybody is that the Cubs really do want to make this a good season. That they're going to do that, and I know that's going to bring some panic-inducing people who hear that and they take it to, well, they're never going to try for Kyle Tucker, and I'm going to kind of push that off to the side right now. I think we just got to wait on that. But I feel good about where they're going. I feel good about their options that they have at the deadline. I feel good about what they can add to it. And I would say as of right now, I've got the season so far as like an A plus. I'm having more fun. I'm having more fun than this year. Probably, I don't know about you, but since 2015, just on the day to day, I'm having more fun with this team than the 2016 day to day. Not because they're better than the 2016, Chicago Cubs who won the World Series, but I didn't really expect them to be this good. I expected them to be good, but not this good. And I'm having fun. So I'm having fun. I think the projections, I'll say, Cubs are in a pretty good spot. The trade deadline suggests they should be able to fix any holes that they have. So I feel pretty good despite the 13-13 month. I try not to live like kind of the minutia. I think I've said it here before, and I'll probably say it 15 more times as we record these. When things are going well, they're never as good as it feels like they're going. When things are going bad, they're never as bad as it feels like it. So if like the worst that the Cubs are going to go through is like a 13-13 stretch against what they just did, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. There's some recency bias tied into what I'm about to say. What bothered me, and I'm happy for the dude, but what bothered me even more so than just the Cubs going 13-13, kind of, record wise again having a meh kind of month. Cam Smith looks pretty good. And
He
again, happy
does.
for the dude, but I was like, dang,
I
and
will.
I'm sure he was a little more juiced up to play
I
the
think he
Cubs, the
was.
team that had just traded him this offseason.
I will say this, and I don't want to slander Cam Smith, but the home runs that he hit against righties were his second and third that he hit all season. He only had one home run against righties entering the series. So I think he was jacked up. His numbers look really good, but most of that had been bolstered up until Friday, all against left-handed pitching. He had 5 home runs on the season. I did a breakdown on the website on it, but he had 5 home runs going into that game. 4 of which came against 2 were against Kyle Hart, who is a replacement level pitcher for the San Diego Padres, who's getting shelled in AAA. The other 2 were JP Sears against the Oakland Sacramento A's, whatever you want to call him. He's one of the worst left-handed pitching starters in baseball. He had 4 of his home runs in 2 games prior to that. So I know the numbers look really good. I know the weekend feels like it is. I kind of wonder if he was just kind of juiced up for the series, because he really hadn't been showing that kind of level. And that, I don't mean to totally dump on the kid. He's actually been better this year than I thought he would. Most rookies really struggle. He struggled less. He's been pretty good, but I'm not so worried about it. Kind of let it be. He had a cool weekend series for him. But if we talked about the 2020 draft, and we talked a couple years ago, because I know a lot of people want to make analogs to Matt Shaw, to Kyle Tucker. If you looked at the draft in 2021, from the 2020 draft, the best outfielder that came out of that draft looked like Jordan Walker. He was killing it his first 450 plate appearances. He's had negative career FWAR in total now. He's been terrible since then. And nowadays, a couple years later, you look at it, well, Pete Crow Armstrong is easily the outfielder you'd want from that draft class.
Oh.
So, give it a couple years. Let's see where Cam Smith goes. Let's see where Matt Shaw goes. When we get to the trade talk, I'll actually give you some good news on Matt Shaw that I know people probably don't want to see it right now. They kind of want to be real down on him. I'm getting that feeling just kind of on social media on Northside. But I'm not nearly as negative on it, and I'll bring it up with the trade talk as well, because preview, one of the guys that I don't have on my list is Eugenio Suarez. He's not on my list, and I know he's going to be a top name for a lot of people, but I think that the Cubs should go a different way. But that's just a little bit of a preview for that.
That's good, because one of my ideas was including the Cub killer Eugenio Suarez. So I like that we're going to have different.
Yes.
We're not both saying.
I do have a different Diamondback on my list, though.
Yeah. Okay. We're not both picking out the same guys in similar trade packages.
No,
That'd be
actually,
kind of boring.
I'm pretty sure at least 2 out of my 3 you will not have on your list.
Awesome. Love hearing that. Before we get to trade talk, and that's why I did mention with Cam Smith, I didn't say he's having an incredible season. The numbers do look kind of good, though. I said that series,
annoying that he hit those
that
home
series
runs,
against
man.
the Cubs was like, damn, this dude looks great against the Cubs.
I felt like that was coming a mile away too.
Yeah.
I had a good feeling. He has a good feeling of being one of those guys that every time we face him, he's just going to have a really good series. Credit to the kid rising up in those moments. Yeah. As much as, I try to kind of take a neutral view on it. I want to give him all the flowers that I can give him. Plaudits, everybody wants kudos. He's been better than I thought he was going to be this year. I still don't think maybe he's as good every night as his numbers make him look like. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give him a lot of credit. He's bucked the trend of top prospects not succeeding kind of in their first couple 100 plate appearances. Yeah. And credit to him for doing that. That's awesome.
You know what was even more unpredictable than him homering twice in that series was Nico Horner homering in back-to-back games in that same series. That's that helped me a lot. I was like, how about Nico? Short portion left a couple times.
The dumbest baseball field in America.
The Crawford box.
Dumbest baseball field. And somebody had to remind me that they used to have that. Oh, the hill. I forgot about that. Somebody reminded me that they had that. The pole out there.
With the pole. Yeah.
Whatever's going on in left center with the fence and what counts as a home run and what doesn't. It's the dumbest baseball field in America. I mean, granted, it's a lot of fun. It's weird, but when Nico Horner is putting 2 out against
blasting back-to-back games,
you know what? You can move it back a little bit. Not good.
I was behind. I didn't know it wasn't called Minute Maid Park anymore.
Yeah, Daikin Park now.
Yeah, and the one thing I noticed is they have that train up there with the tracks, and they used to fill it with oranges.
Yes.
And now it's baseballs. There's like
baseballs.
baseballs out
Yeah,
there.
I remember.
Like,
I forgot what it was called headed into the series. I knew that Minute Maid had dropped their sponsorship on it. Minute Maid was a better name.
Yeah. So I was it helped cushion the blow watching Cam Smith getting and Nico Horner is an awesome player. We went in depth on him last week in a segment.
Yeah, Nico's
but
great.
It was I got a little chuckle seeing him homer back-to-back games attacking the Crawford box. I was like, that's awesome. There you go, Nico with homers in 2 straight in that same series. Before we get to trade talk, he is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Woodmeyer, Northside Baseball Podcast. We got to talk about Michael Busch, and I kind of labeled it as the quietly great season that Michael Busch is having. And really, if people are going to do this thing on social media, Jason, and it sounds like it, you roll your eyes at it just like I do, like people doing this doom and gloom after a 13-13 month of June. If people want to talk about, the month of June, let's talk about it with Michael Busch then too, because when I zoom in the microscope on him in the month of June, he slashed 309, 385, 617. He had a 176 WRC plus, an OPS of 1.002. He went yards 7 times. His strikeout rate continued to drop. And if you look year over year, you look at the first half of this season with all of 2024, his strikeout rate has drastically improved so far this year. It's gotten a lot better. And so if people want to do, and it's fine, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but if people are going to do this like, oh, June 13-13, I'm worried about the Cubs. If you want to instead focus on 1 month instead of the whole year, I can focus on 1 month of Michael Busch and the whole year because he's been pretty damn good the whole year, but he was pretty lights out the entire month of June for the Cubs.
Oh, lights out, and he's been great on the season. He's sitting at a 145 WRC plus for the year, and I just happened to pull it up on Fangraphs. If it was 2022, that would have made him the 9th best hitter in baseball. Wow. In 2024, that would have made him the 10th best hitter in baseball. Now, I do think probably important to call it out that he's doing it only against right-handed pitching. He's terrible.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up next.
So let's pump it a little bit, but having a 145 WRC plus that he's having right now is probably, we don't talk about it enough and what he's doing and how good he's been. He's been phenomenal. He's fixed a lot of the chase issues. He's fixed a lot of the whiff issues. When he came up originally, there was a concern that he just couldn't hit fastballs over 94 miles an hour. He's crushing fastballs this year. He's crushing changeups. He's crushing sliders. I think the only pitch that he wasn't doing really good against this year is sinkers. So whatever. But everything is phenomenal. He's been a great player. I know defensively, he doesn't get a lot of OAA. My eye test says he's better at it than like OAA says. And I know that DRS always kind of had a weird ability to gauge first base defense. I do kind of wonder if like the nature of first base is still like kind of like a weird OAA blind spot, or maybe, I'm just doing what I always tell people not to do, which is to use your eye test. Probably doesn't matter as much. But he's been fantastic. Just really, really good. And, we talk a lot about trades and giving up like good prospects and everything like that. And I'll kind of bring it up when we talk minor league report with some of the guys, but the futures game is coming up in the All-Star break. And, Zahir Hope's playing in the futures game for the Dodgers, and that's all good and great and everything like that. But as much as, Zahir Hope looks like he could be a good major league player, all Michael Busch is on pace for is just shy under 4 wins for the Cubs this year. So, I think one of those things that we always kind of have to remind her with those trades is, Zahir Hope is probably going to get some love in terms of prospect rankings, but don't forget that, Michael Busch is putting up real world wins now. And those are always really matter. He's been great.
I was going to ask the secondary part of this. Do you start playing him every day, use him against lefties, or
no?
You don't think so?
No,
it's bad. But I didn't.
It's terrible. Yeah. The answer to the Cubs' inability to hit left-handed pitching is not more Michael Busch. And that's a Justin Turner problem, right? The problem is Justin Turner, and the answer isn't more Michael Busch. It's the same amount Michael Busch with somebody who hits better than Justin Turner. That's the answer. Like, we'll talk about the bench later.
Yeah.
But the issue with the Cubs bench is the Cubs bench. And it isn't, I don't think it's more Michael Busch. Matt Trueblood had written an article a little while ago about swing changes with Michael Busch. And I know if you look at his WRC plus last year, it looked like he was a pretty good hitter against lefties. The more I dove into it was a lot of soft contact, high BABIP, and fly balls without being home runs. So soft contact in the air, no home runs is luck. When you have a high BABIP, that's luck. He can't produce that, and his swing is even worse against lefties this year. It's better against righties, worse against lefties. I think we just have to accept that he's a platoon guy, but he's just a really good one, and that's okay. You can be a really good platoon one. In our heads, I think we think platoon's like a dirty word. I don't have a problem with it. It's like saying you're better against right-handed pitcher. It's like Mark Leiter Jr., who had been pitching for the Cubs for the last couple of years. His splitter's nasty against lefties. He's not so good against righties, but against lefties, it's not a bad thing, and we didn't think he was a dirty pitcher because of it. So I don't think Michael Busch is a dirty player because he's more of a platoon guy. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say too, like, I think when people think of platoon, they often think of like a 50-50 split. I mean, they're still seeing more righties than lefties on on an average basis. So it's not like we're not seeing Michael Busch 3 days a week and Justin Turner the other 3. It just doesn't split up like that for the Cubs.
No. Busch is on pace to have, probably over 550 plate appearances this year. He's doing just fine.
100%. Let's dive into trade talk. I'm terrified they're going to make a move an hour or two after we end the.
Listen, if they make a move for any of the guys on my list, I'm going to be okay with it.
Okay. So basically, I wanted the idea of each of us, without telling the other who we were trading for, who we were including in the package going out, come up with a couple of ideas. Did you say you have 3 or do you have 2?
I cheated and I have 3.
Okay.
I added a third one. Actually, I could have 4. There were a few names that I was pretty interested in. But I have a few of them. Yeah.
I'll let you go first then, because I came up with 2 concrete ones that I like. So I'll let you go, and then I'll say one of mine, and then you say one of yours. I'll say one of mine, and then you'll finish up with your third. So you can tee it off.
Cool. My tee it off is going to be my guy that I want the most. I don't think that it's going to happen, but I've kind of targeted him as the guy that I would like the most in Wrigley. And it's Jake Bird, reliever for the Colorado Rockies, quietly top 10 reliever in baseball this year. He is funkalicious. He has an 18-degree arm angle, so it's coming in flat. He has changed the shape of his breaking balls this year, and they're grading out as absolute stuff monsters. This guy's breaking stuff is slider. His secondaries are like 120 plus on stuff plus. It is disgusting. He's 29 years old. He's in Colorado. The Rockies suck. The Rockies do not need a reliever who is 29 years old. He also has like 4 years of control left.
Ooh,
so it's this like weird ability where it's his first really good year. You're the Rockies. You're terrible. You have no hope this year and probably no hope for the next couple of years. You're going to be really bad. They need help. So Jake Bird's got to be available in theory. Now, the Rockies have a weird history of not trading relievers. So, they had, who was it a couple years ago? Bard. I was a Bard. Daniel Bard. Was it Daniel Bard? Either way, it was a relief pitcher, older guy. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. All of a sudden, I want to say maybe his last name was Bird too. But
it's Bard. Yeah, it's Bard.
It's Bard. Okay, it was Bard. All right.
Yeah.
But they refused to trade him, and then they re-signed him to when he was like 38, and he's been terrible ever since. So they have a weird history of this. But Jake Bird he's my guy. Just diving into the numbers. He's absolutely crushing it on like xERA. So all of his X data looks great. He only throws about 94 miles an hour because he's got that weird delivery. He's real sidearmy, but he is like upper third on chase percentage, upper third on whiff percentage, 87th percentile in strikeout percentage, 89th percentile in barrel percentage, which is awesome on those windy blowing out days at Wrigley Field. He gets ground balls. He's one of my favorite guys. I don't think he costs a top prospect. Relievers don't go for that. So, if I'm looking at the Rockies feel like a team where you can center something around Jake Bird, and then you can offer them maybe like a Jonathan Long, somebody whose power maybe plays up a little bit more in the cavernous Coors, real StatCast kind of monster kind of guy, first base DH type thing. You're probably adding more to that then. So like kind of a lot of my deals are kind of centered around concepts, not necessarily like a super concrete. It's really hard to figure out what these teams like. But I
Yeah.
feel like Jonathan Long is a guy who, if I'm the Rockies, I can get a 23-year-old hitter who's ready today type of a thing. Put him in my stadium. He's probably going to hit there. Statcast monster. Maybe I go and find like some IFA younger guys. Maybe an Eli Lovich is somebody that I'm like really interested in on the low end. You know, he's just coming up at Myrtle, and he's been struggling a little bit, but he's kind of a developmental project. And then there's probably some secondary pretty decent piece in there. You know, maybe Ryan Gallagher, if you like Ryan Gallagher as kind of that, or like a Carter Trice or something like that. But I think you can get somewhere there. I think you can get there, and you don't have to give up I think you can get Jake Bird without giving up a Casey, Alcantara, Ballesteros, Wiggins, or Rojas. And I think if you can get that guy for that, and he comes with control, I'm all about it. So Jake Bird, he's my number one. I'm actually going to write an article on Northside here in the next like day or so on him. But he is like top of my list. I love Jake Bird.
I love it. When you said the Rockies have a weird history of not wanting to trade relievers, I thought you could have stopped that sentence after history. The Rockies have
that's the weird history, man. they handle their pitchers weird, so I never know like who's available for the Rockies or not. I would think that a 30-year-old, like a 29, soon to be 30-year-old reliever who's in a career year, I think it's repeatable based on what I'm seeing. I don't think this is like some sort of like he can't do it again type of a thing. This is like he's getting lucky. Nothing I see is getting lucky. I think he's kind of earning this, but you know, if I'm the Rockies, I got 29, almost 30-year-old volatile reliever. If I can get a Jonathan Long, if I project him as like a first base DH starter, you know, 120, 125 plus WRC plus kind of guy, and I can trade a reliever for that, I'm going to do that all day and every, you know, twice on Sunday. The Cubs are in a unique situation where they've got the aforementioned Michael Busch. So it's kind of where I was thinking on it. That's my first one, my first thought.
Yeah, I like it. The interesting thing about talking Cubs trade talk this deadline is they could go bat, they could go bullpen, they could go rotation, they could go 2 out of the 3. They could go all 3. Like there's so many options and ideas to throw out there. So I like your first
I think
one.
they'll get probably 2 out of 3 of those.
Yeah. So my first idea, I went under the premise of just like ideas that I liked. It's not yours is like this is who I want and this is how I could see it coming together, which I like. I just did like I'd like to see this guy in Chicago. Here's how I think it would work out. So my first one is Eugenio Suarez.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because like I think my mind is a bit like poisoned because you watch him against the Cubs throughout his career and he looks like the best third baseman of all time. And he's putting up really good numbers again this year. He does
great numbers this year.
He does not solve the riddle of Cubs issues against lefties, which is odd because he is a right-hand hitter, but he has not been good against lefties this year. So I kept this one short and sweet, Jason, and my inspiration for it was a trade the Cubs made on July 30th, 2021, when they traded Javi Baez to the Mets for Pete Crow Armstrong. And I know Trevor Williams was thrown in there as like filler. He was just another piece for the Mets. But the bulk of that trade was a 1-for-1. Javi Baez, Pete Crow Armstrong. And if you remember when they traded for PCA, the Mets took certain players off the table. Jed Hoyer just talked about this again recently. I forget what podcast he was on. It was like the New York Post sports podcast with John Heyman and someone else. And he had mentioned how the Mets were taking certain players off the table. You got to remember when the Cubs traded for PCA, he was injured. Like he was injured and he was down for quite a while. Mm-hmm. But the Cubs were like, we'll still give you Javi Baez, who was a rental. We get Pete Crow Armstrong, and we kind of know how that turned out for the Cubs. It turned out awesome. In my trade scenario here, Eugenio Suarez is a rental. Odds of, getting him and then re-signing him, I would say, is pretty slim because you still want Matt Shaw to be your third baseman of the future, and you're going to give him ample opportunity to do so. Maybe the price is a little steep, but I did a 1-for-1. Again, drawing inspiration from that 2021 trade. Cubs get Suarez. Arizona receives Kevin Alcantara. Suarez is the rental. Alcantara is struggling this year. He still has, you've talked about him a lot, a lot of the tools, the intangibles that scouts enjoy. I know last week when I was putting these together, I was like, how's he doing lately? And I saw he had like 3 multi-hit games last week, homered in back-to-back games, still number 66 on MLB's top prospects list. He's ranked as the Cubs' third best prospect. So Arizona's getting a guy that has promise, has potential. The Cubs are getting a bat that you hope really helps boost that lineup and shows that, hey, we're, this is a rental. We're trying to win this year while also keeping our long-term window open. And I do think the domino effect of getting Suarez, and I know we're going to talk about the bench next, but getting Suarez, Jason, and then having the ability to have Matt Shaw come off your bench, like all of a sudden the bench gets a huge boost, right? Like,
Yeah.
so my trade was just a 1-for-1. I kind of kept it short, sweet, and to the point. I know a lot of people, and I hope this isn't spoiling yours because I know you said you had someone for Arizona, but a lot of these trades I've seen, people are like, Zach Kelly and Suarez, Merrill Kelly and Suarez.
Mhm.
And it's like when you're trying to piece together a trade like that, even as like a hypothetical idea, those are so hard to navigate. Like I've
Really hard.
seen so many, Jason. I've seen let's kill two birds with one stone, Joe Ryan and Johan Duran. And it's like, well, trying to figure out what the right compensation is to go back to Minnesota and what
It's
they'd
hard.
even take. It's so hard instead of just splitting it up. So as appetizing as it would be for me to sit here and say, we'll take Suarez and Gallon, or we'll take Suarez and Merrill Kelly, or we'll take Suarez and Shelby Miller, and here's what we're giving you back to Arizona. It was just too hard. So I was like, short and sweet. Cubs get Suarez. He's the rental. They get Alcantara. It's very similar to that trade in 2021 the Cubs made when they were on the other end of it, trading Baez to the Mets and getting back PCA. So that was my first idea to get Suarez in there.
I'll give you my third baseman because I've got a third baseman on my list, and it's Ramon Urias
Okay.
from the Baltimore Orioles, not a Eugenio Suarez. And the reason why is because Matt Shaw has made improvements, and
Yeah.
people are, and you're not seeing it right now. The WRC plus over his last 8 days, 72. You're not seeing it, but if you go into the data, all of a sudden his hard hit rate went up from like 25% to 35.7%. That's when he raised his hands. He moved his hands up just a little bit. He is maintained a strong launch angle over that time. And the reason that I don't want to block Matt Shaw with like Suarez, and I get it, everyone wants to play for the World Series this year, is we have to ask ourselves, who on the team is the most likely to take a jump, right? And if we look back at last year, who took a jump right around the July All-Star break area? But 2 Cubs rookies who went through the throes of mechanical changes and about 200 plate appearances. Pete Armstrong, Miguel Amaya, who have been 2 of the best Cubs hitters this year. They made big jumps in the second half. I mean, Amaya had like a 150 WRC plus for the second half of the season, right? So Matt Shaw is kind of poised to do that. And I think we're starting to see some of the signs. He's changing his mechanics. He's changing how hard he's hit. His hardest hit ball of the season came the other day. His Friday against the Astros, when we're talking about things that we're not seeing, he had 3 hits with an XBA over 490. He got one of them. He only got one of them to land. Yeah, I think you expect more than that. So he's and Fangraphs just updated BABIP. People who have been underplaying and overplaying their kind of BABIPs, their WARs, their hard hits, their whatever. Matt Shaw was one of the lowest on the list in terms of underperforming his BABIP. His BABIP should be about 60 points higher. In the 340 range, and it's in the 270 range. I don't want to block him with somebody who's going to start every day. What I do want to do is give the Cubs an opportunity to have somebody who can spell Michael Busch a little bit, who can hit lefties, and who could play in a tough right-handed position at third base if you needed to. So I went with Ramon Urias. He's 31 years old. Baltimore picked him up off of waivers. He's not going to be expensive. I think you get him relatively cheap from an Orioles team that just doesn't look like they're going anywhere this year. He's crushing lefties this year. Let me give you the exact numbers on him. Sorry, I went away from it a moment ago. But on the season, against left-handed pitching, he's sitting at a 120 WRC plus. It's not BABIP fueled. It's like 333, a 24 strikeout rate against them. So there's nothing here that makes you look like he can't continue to do this. If we look at his career numbers against lefties, again, he's got a 102 against lefties in his career. I think he's cheap. If I'm the Orioles, I'm trying to think of it realistically. The Orioles need pitching. The Cubs have a decent amount of like this AAA pitching. I don't know if it would require as much as a Jordan Wicks, but like a Javier Assad, a Brandon Birdsell who's been injured, maybe a Will Sanders. Some of these kind of like younger, a little bit of upside starting pitchers in AAA, and then you add in like an outfielder, right? I just wrote an article Or there'll be an article going up on some names that I think are likely to go. And if we think of like how the Cubs acquired Andrew Chafin a couple years ago, it was one AAA player, one lottery ticket. So let's call Ramon Urias, a platoon first base, third baseman, a mid reliever like Andrew Chafin. What did we get for Andrew Chafin? We got Greg Diekman, who was a AAA outfielder, had pedigree coming from the SEC, second round pick, looked like the platoon guy maybe, and Daniel Palencia, right? That's what we got. At the time, Palencia was like a 19-year-old kid who threw really hard in the lowest levels. So, I think you give them a Birdsell, a Sanders, an Assad, plus some low ticket kind of guy. I get JP Wheat throws 100 miles an hour, can't throw a strike to save his life a lot of times. I think you can get a Ramon Urias. So I think he kind of fits into that perfect category for me. Doesn't block Shaw, allows the growth to continue to happen, but gives you kind of a floor if you need it. He's got a career a 104 against WRC plus against righties. Isn't there this year? But I think he kind of hits that level. And heck, he's got 2 years of control. So you get him this year and you get him next year if you want him. It feels like kind of a perfect way to solve a bench problem. Get another guy. He's not super expensive. So that was my third baseman was Urias.
Yeah, I think two things I like about that is I'm a big team control guy. Like I said Suarez in my first trade, recognizing he's a rental. I do love the idea of team control because to me it shows an investment in the now and the future, which is always good. And he's got versatility, like you said. If you wanted to slide him around a little bit on the infield, which I'm always a very big proponent of, like guys that can wear multiple hats, guys that can do multiple things pretty well. With Suarez, you like my idea. Suarez is strictly a third baseman. Like you're not putting Suarez at first base if there's a lefty on the mound, to spell Michael Busch or whatever. So I like that idea too. My last one, and then we'll get your last one. I caved in. I went big game hunting just for the hell of it. And I don't know if the Marlins would ever do this, but in my scenario, the Cubs do get Sandy Alcantara, and the Marlins receive Moises Ballesteros, Brandon Birdsell, and Jonathan Long. And the reason I don't know if they do it is I kept Owen out of it, and I couldn't get myself to include Jackson Wiggins in a trade. And I know, reality might paint a different picture for us as the deadline nears. You talking about Jackson Wiggins in the minor league reports the last couple months, and then me going and like always looking at his numbers after he's on the bump, it's like, I want to keep this guy. I want to keep building him up in the system. I want to see him in a Cubs uniform at the major league level someday. So I don't know if the Marlins do that. It's the Cubs number 2, number 6, and number 11 prospects. So it's not like you're giving them nothing, and you're giving them Ballesteros, catcher, DH, first base. You're giving them a pitcher in Birdsell, and then Jonathan Long. I mean, ideally, it's a right-handed batter that plays first base, but I know, wasn't it last year they tried him in the outfield? They tried him at the hot corner, and it didn't work out.
He's the first base DH.
It's first base DH.
He's played a little bit of third base in Iowa, but it's just not a lot. I think the team's telling you what they feel about him.
100%. And so it's Alcantara. It's not, I saw some people doing the Alcantara and Cabrera. It's like, that's just not going to happen, like in one trade. So I did Alcantara, and they get Ballesteros, the Cubs number 2 prospect, Birdsell, the number 6, Long, the number 11. And so again, it's the Cubs getting 1, giving up 3 prospects. I just, it's hard to try to hammer down what exactly the value will be for Alcantara because he started so miserably, and then he had a stretch of, was it a little less than a month where it was like, okay, Sandy's back to Sandy, and then he had another recent rough start, and it's kind of up and down, but there's name recognition. He's a Cy Young caliber pitcher when he's at his best, and you would hope to get that out of him if the Cubs do end up doing business and trading for him. I also leaned this way because this offseason we know the Cubs had talked to Miami about Luzardo. There's obviously been at least some sort of dialogue for Alcantara, Cabrera. That's been reported on. And so knowing that there's been conversations already dating back to this offseason when Luzardo was on the table and he ended up where Philadelphia, knowing that the Cubs have already had communication with Miami dating back to the winter on this stuff makes me think like, okay, it's they're at least going to pick up the phone and maybe they can hash something out. So That's where I land on Alcantara for Ballesteros, Birdsell, and Long. And then I think if you get the good version of Sandy, that's that's easily your number 2 in the rotation behind Shota. So that's what I went with for the second one.
So my third one it was kind of like a split decision, right? I could have gone two ways with my third one. I could have gone with the rental starting pitcher, and that's what I'll talk about. But if I was going to go with like a controllable one, I would have gone with Miami, but not Sandy. It would have been Edwin Cabrera.
Yep.
Big fan of him. He had 100 miles an hour on the gun the other day. I think you get him out of Miami. He's really starting to turn some corners with control, command in the zone. The K rate's jumping. I would really like to get him. I think if we were really going big fit game hunting, that's a big game that I'd go after. He's 27. He's controlled. I like Edwin, but my rental starting pitcher, who I think is both available and isn't going to cost that much, is Merrill Kelly.
Okay.
Merrill Kelly, he's a top 20 starting pitcher in terms of xFIP on the year. He is absolutely crushing it. 328 xFIP. He's got a 349 ERA. xERA is a little bit higher than that. The like Savant data doesn't love him as much, but he's kind of one of these guys who seems to like get away with not having great data on the back end, but he just beats guys. He's been doing it long enough to where I'm willing to ignore it. There's some guys where you go on their Savant page, you see all blue, and you immediately think this guy sucks. But Merrill Kelly's Savant page looks like that every year, and dating back to 2021, he's been really good. He's been a really good pitcher, and his K rate has jumped. You can even say he's getting a little unlucky. His left on base percentage this year is like 7% lower than normal. So you could say his ERA is a little high. Expiring pitcher, 34 years old. He's good, but he doesn't have like name recognition. So I think that's going to keep costs down. I don't think that one's going to be super expensive either. Maybe you have to go with an Alcantara there. But I feel like you might be able to go maybe a level down below even that. If you could find some mid guys, it could be another Jonathan Long situation. They've got Bo Naylor, who's about to leave at the end of the season as a free agent. There hasn't been really any signs of bringing him back. I feel as though it's too low. I don't really know where it could go. It could be like a Jonathan Long, Jordan Wicks thing. They've got a lot of pitchers who just aren't going to be in the rotation. Burns is probably going to miss most of next year too. So maybe like Jordan Wicks, like interest them. 25-year-old. I'll talk about him in the minor league report, but he's having a great run of games right now. He's ticked up on the velocity, striking people out at a pretty high rate. I think if I were an opposing team, Jordan Wicks, who may or may not have a role with the Cubs, could work. If we wanted to go Edwin Cabrera with the Marlins, that's probably like Ben Brown at the very least, going back the other way. Plus, but I'd probably make that move too.
Yeah.
I talked about Matt Shaw improving. If we want to talk about Matt Shaw improving, the one thing that's not going to improve, it's not like Colin Ray is going to get any better. Colin Ray is what he is. Yeah, he's okay, right? He's okay, but you can improve on that, and you don't have to worry about like Colin Ray getting better in like September and October. You get like a Suarez, you get a starting third baseman over Matt Shaw. By the end of the season, he might only be like half a win better than Shaw for the rest of the season. I mean, that's realistic. Whereas like you could probably 1.5 to 2.2 wins over Colin Ray. I think that's possible. Colin Ray's been that bad lately. I think he's looking more and more like that kind of early run. Teams have kind of figured out his new changes and everything like that. So you can get rid of Colin Ray and like upgrade there. I think that's really important. So I would like to focus mostly on pitching with like a left-handed hitting third baseman type, but that's kind of where I would go. I know Matt's kind of reported that everything's on the table with the Cubs. Jim Bowden's reported that the Cubs want to win the deadline. So I think whatever ends up happening, I think it's set up that we're going to have an exciting trade deadline. I think the Cubs are going to be in a good place to fix a lot of their holes, and I'm excited to see what they end up doing.
You brought up an Arizona guy in Merrill Kelly in one of your trades. I brought one up in Eugenio Suarez. Are the Diamondbacks going to be sellers? Like the good is, hey, it's not good, but you got back to 500. You're 4 games out of a wild card spot. The bad is Corbin Burns is done for the year. Yes, you're only 4 games out of a wild card spot, but you're 4th in your own division. Like you're behind the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants. The Giants just got Devers. I don't think the Giants are gonna like veer the other direction and just fall
Yeah.
off the map. I certainly don't think the Padres or Dodgers will. I'm just right now, like when I talked about us, finishing the podcast today and being worried about the Cubs making a trade within the next hour or two. I'm not worried about it happening with Arizona because I don't think right now they're like, hey, we're going to be sellers. They might be trying to like falsely convince themselves that, hey, we can still really get back into this thing. I just think there's so much working against him. Primarily, I still go back and circle the Corbin Burns injury coupled with the division they're in. And yeah, they're only 4 games out of a wild card spot, but they would have to leapfrog quite a few
lot of
teams.
teams.
They're behind Cincinnati, San Francisco, and San Diego, who are all currently on the outside looking in. And there's a lot of baseball left to be played, but do you think Arizona does get to the deadline and ends up being sellers? Because the reason I included Suarez in one of my ideas is because I do think they get to that point where they're like, hey,
I think they'll get there earlier.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to look at you just look at they're the 10th highest playoff odds of any NL team right now. And that's jumping a bunch of teams, and you have to ask yourself, like, where is it getting better? Like where is it getting better now that you don't have Corbin Burns? And I think they've got to ask themselves, like realistically, what are we going to be next year? They're losing players. Bo Naylor, or Josh Naylor, he's gone at the end of the season. Merrill Kelly, free agent, could be gone at the end of the season. So you've got guys that you're about to lose. You have to ask yourself, is this the team that you're going to ride and die with? Or are we going to maybe trade a few of these guys? Zach Gallen, free agent at the end of the season. He's been terrible. And he's been really bad lately, really bad lately. So you just have to ask yourself, like, if I'm Arizona, I don't think it's getting any better. At some point, there's going to have to be a team that jumps the market, right? If I was one of these kind of like fringe teams right now, I'd have to ask myself, like, can I jump the market? Can I throw Merrill Kelly, Eugenio Suarez, Josh Naylor, and Zach Allen on the market today? Jump all of these other teams and start hauling in guys before everybody else. And I think the Diamondbacks are kind of set up to be in that situation. It's a little bit unlike, the Pirates, who probably don't have a lot to trade. Maybe Mitch Keller, it's a name that popped up.
Keep Brian Hayes,
Bednar, but those are guys they control, right? They don't have to trade them today.
Yeah.
They don't have to trade them in July, whereas Arizona is like, they're a better playoff odds than that, but they're not in good playoff odds right now. Their playoff odds are about what they're like what the Rangers are in the West, and they're 41-44, and they're just in a tough division being fourth. I think the Diamondbacks are going to be more interested in selling maybe than we give them credit for. I think I would probably jump that market if I were them. If I could trade, an extra month of these guys, especially like a Zach Allen, who's just having a terrible season, I could trade him somewhere. Somebody could grab him, maybe hope that they can fix him a little bit earlier. I don't know. My guess is that I think Arizona is going to be more willing to trade than we're giving them credit for it, just because I don't see a path out. I don't see a path out for them right now. That's coming.
I think too. I was just looking at their schedule. So right now they beat San Francisco on Monday, but they're in the middle of a 4-game series against the Giants, and they have a 4-game series at San Diego before the All-Star break. Like we just talked about, that's 2 teams that are ahead of you right now, not only in the wild card race, but in your own division. You're in 4th in the NL West.
I would guess that's
if those 2 series, if those 2 series don't go well, that is the signal, right? Where it's like,
it's got to be,
cut loose and start making some deals,
especially with as many guys as they have who should be available at the end of the season,
and rental guys, rental guys.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to make a decision. And I think it'll probably be quicker than not. So probably not at the end of the podcast, but I would be surprised if in the next couple of weeks, next week or so, they don't make a decision where it's kind of game over for them.
Yeah. That was a good segment. I like doing that. I just, the Cubs are right in the mix. They're leading the NL Central, and then I'm reading the Slack channel messages, and everyone's talking about potential trade targets, and it gets giddy, right? It's like, this is fun to see who the Cubs will land, because the question is not, are the Cubs going to make a move? It's, what is the move? How many moves are there going to be?
Yeah, I think it's truly how many moves are they going to make? Because everything suggests that they have to bring in a starting pitcher. Like, I don't think it's a question. They seem to have been like basically knocking over every potential there. So what they do at starting pitcher, I think, is going to be fascinating. And I know I know that there are a lot of names out there, rental names and everything like that. The Cubs are kind of set up to almost bully a team who's kind of fringy, who might have like a starting pitcher that they don't want to trade into trading them. Kyle Bubich is a name in like Kansas City that that they need offense. The Cubs have offensive prospects. That could be a situation where they bully them into it. I think even less so maybe Mackenzie Gore from the Nationals.
I would love
They traded
Mackenzie Gore.
They traded Juan Soto right around this time,
I
and you
would
have to
love
look
Mackenzie
at the
Gore.
Nationals, and you have to say where are they going in the next 2 or 3 years? Are they going to make a commitment to a starting pitcher like that? I think it's pretty unlikely, but
they have some
that
fun
we could
pieces.
trade for them. But
not
they
trade
have
pieces.
some fun pieces.
Like James Wood's
they have
awesome.
some. Yeah, but they have nothing behind it. Like
I know.
Their team is really weird. They've got James Wood, they've got CJ Abrams, both really good. But then they also have some of the worst players in baseball. Keibert Ruiz has been horrible.
Yeah.
The worst, basically the worst baseball player in Major League for the last 3 years. And they run him out every day. So they have just nothing behind some of these guys. Dylan Cruz, you hope he figures it out. He hasn't figured it out yet. Brady House, maybe he's a little bit less of a prospect. Elijah Green looks not good.
They had
they can't develop.
Is his name Brad Lord? They had a guy who was working at Home Depot last year. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
story.
that sounds about right. The Nationals are such
that's
a weird
not a joke.
team.
That's not a joke.
Yeah, I'm not I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
The Nationals are such a weird team. The Rockies get a lot of rightfully so for just being the worst, but the Nationals are such a weird organization too. They have not played things all that great in the last couple of years. Woods has really worked out, and Abrams has really worked out, but a couple of those other guys have just not. So we'll see what ends up happening there.
Northside Baseball Podcast. He's Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Whitmire, talking anything, everything Chicago Cubs baseball. We pivot from trade talk to the bench. They could use a boost on the bench via.
Oh God, it sucks. It sucks. It's worse than I thought it was. I pulled up the Fangraph page on all 3 of them. It's worse than I thought.
So I was gonna say, Statcast page, Fangraphs. It's all ugly for Turner, Brujan, Birdie. Like, it's bad.
Horrible.
And if we want to simplify the current state of the Cubs bench, Jason, is it fair for me? You can say no and tell me it's not fair. That's fine. If I wanted to simplify it and someone said, someone who wasn't a Cubs fan, wasn't a baseball fan, said, hey, how would you summarize Chicago's bench? I'd say, well, it's a catcher. It's either Carson Kelly or Reese McGuire doesn't start on a given night. It's a couple good base runners and a vibes guy. That's pretty much like Birdie's a good base runner. Brujan's a decent base runner. Justin Turner's a vibes guy, but it's far from what you would call ideal. How worried are you?
Justin Turner's 62 WRC plus
is
lapping the field. I'm taking the catcher out of this because whoever the Cubs play a catcher, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But lapping the field. John Birdie is second with a 42. Vidal Brujan has a 9.
I saw it
9.
Yeah.
Combined, they're a negative 0.8 F-WAR. They're terrible. they're just awful. And listen, negative 0.8 sounds bad, but then you realize Vidal Brujan has 33 plate appearances.
Yeah.
John Birdie has 92 plate appearances. They don't even play.
No.
They never play these guys. And when they do, they're horrible.
You know what jumped out to me last week real quick too? The Cubs were playing the Cardinals. I don't know what game of the series it was. It was the 7th inning. The Cubs were down a run, and there was a runner on base. 7th inning. I think there was an out. It doesn't matter. It was 7th inning. There was a runner on base down 2, and Brujan was batting. And I was just like, they don't even have an option to pivot to if they didn't want Brujan to take this at bat.
No,
that's where I was like, holy crap. Like, there's you can't pivot.
2 of these guys got to go. Right. Two of them got to go. Brujan and Birdie have to go. I was a believer in Birdie at the beginning of the season, but he's done nothing. He's just been terrible.
Yeah.
And Vidal Brujan, I always thought was going to get DFA'd at some point, but he's been worse than I thought he was. His ex-WOBA sucks. At least John Birdie, his X data suggests he's a little bit better. Justin Turner's X data suggests he's a little bit better. I don't think Justin Turner's going anywhere. I think he's here for the long haul. He's going to be the
vibes guy.
Yep. He's going to be the 26th man, but you can fix the Brujan Birdie situation. I think Urias gives you one, and the Cubs have a couple of guys in the minors, Jonathan Long or Christian Franklin. If they wanted to bring one of those guys up, they could put him on the bench. If you really wanted to, as the season wears on, you could go Owen Casey off of the bench. It's kind of a left-handed pop. But yeah, they've got to trade for at least one, probably two guys. This is bad. And I don't think it's
Candelario
helping.
get picked up? I mean, I know that sounds crazy,
I
but
think he's still.
he's a
Let me
free
look
agent.
it
Okay, he's a free agent.
Is he officially a free agent now?
Yeah, Reds release Candelario from free agency contract 1 day ago.
Okay, so
he
he's
is a
officially
free agent.
I would take him on
dude, it can't possibly be worse than
I wouldn't put him
the
in the
three-headed monster they have on the bench right now.
I wouldn't put him on the bench right away, but I put him in Iowa just to see. They
Yeah.
got to figure something out because the bench is, God, it's awful. It's so bad. And I try to remain really positive about things and try to find some
I know
undercurrents. But I've got so little to talk about positively. I mean, the best isolated slugging the team has is Vidal Brujan's .063. Like he's leading the power department on the bench, and that includes Justin Turner. That's because in Vidal Brujan has 2 doubles.
Yeah.
In nothing at bats, but he's horrible. He's so bad, and I feel bad because I don't want to really dump on these guys, but
we're not going to sugarcoat it. Yeah,
bad. But I can't sugarcoat it either. These guys have been really bad, and the Cubs need to figure something out because as the season goes on, we can't play these guys every day. Some of these guys need a break, and I think the plan on Birdie and Justin Turner was to give some of these guys a break, but you can't give PCA a break and put in Vidal Brujan in center field or John Birdie. They're terrible. It's free out. It's like saying I don't want to play with the DH. I'd rather Shota Imanaga pick up a bat today. And that's what you do when you start one of these guys.
Where's
right
Travis
now.
Wood?
Yeah, it would be an improvement.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
It's been bad.
What is Travis Wood's career? Now I'm going to look up Travis.
I'm glad I just randomly brought that name up. Then look.
Me too, because I would
I would take Travis Wood or Carlos Zambrano as a bench bat over.
Oh my God,
over what they're working with.
It's got to be all right. Travis Wood's career WRC plus is 41. John Birdie's season is 42. He's
right there.
He's Travis Wood.
That's Travis
cool.
Wood.
Yeah, I thought I would until I realized John Birdie's hitting like him.
Was Travis Wood a switch hitter? Or am I crazy?
No, he batted right-handed. Said, in his final season, he did have a 96 WRC plus, which would make him the starting third baseman for the Cubs right now. So
crazy, man. Yeah, it's weird. Like the offense has been so good, but like you said, they need breaks once in a while. Some of these guys,
they need a break.
They're going to filter out how you do it too. And we've been so focused, rightfully so. Like, man, I think they'll add to the rotation. Who's it going to be? Man, I think they'll add back into the bullpen. Maybe who's it going to be? And all of a sudden, just a massively glaring need is you need some bench production.
Yeah, you got to have something. There's nothing there. They're so bad.
It's terrible. Let's finish up maybe a couple of names that could help out on the bench. Although it would limit their at bats at the major league level, knowing that they'd be at the bench when you want them to get reps at the minor league level before coming up to the major league level. But let's do your minor league report and see who you're talking about today. Is Alcantara on there? Because I said
he's had a great week.
Yeah, he had a really. When I brought up that trade Suarez for Alcantara, I was like, let me see what he did this week, and I was like, damn, he had himself a hell of a week.
He had a week. We're gonna lead it off with good news, bad news. Good news. Jackson Wiggins and Owen Casey named to the Futures game coming up here in a couple of weeks. I believe it's Owen Casey's second time in the Futures game. Jackson Wiggins, obviously, is first. He's had a great year. Bad news, he didn't pitch at all last week. Not once. He was scheduled to start twice and didn't. My hope is that a lot of this is load management. Minor league to be announced pitchers are pretty common. He's thrown a lot this year compared to what he has in the past. This is somebody who's coming off of a TGS at college. Last year, he threw combined 59 innings. This year, he's at 60 innings. I don't think it's surprising that he's getting a little bit of a break. I'm not surprised that he's kind of not getting some starts maybe in the lead up to the trade deadline. I think if you asked internally to the Cubs, who do you not want to trade? I think Jackson Wiggins is probably at the top of that list right now because, their pitching depth behind him is kind of spotty. And he's having such a breakout. I don't think they want to trade him. So I think it's some load management. We'll see. My other thought about it is that I don't think he'd be named to the futures game if he wasn't likely to participate. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I'm just overthinking that a little bit. It's also some hopium, probably, that there's nothing major there. But, his last start, he did walk 4. He looked kind of gassed at the end. He didn't come out for like an injury. My guess he's just tired and it's load management. We'll talk about another Iowa pitcher before we get into some of the hitters. But Jordan Wicks is crushing it right now. He's had an uptick in velocity, struck out 6 over his last 5, only walked 1. His last 16, he's striking out 32.3% of the hitters he's facing. He's walking under 5%. He's got a 1.64 FIP. He's finally healthy. I know people are kind of down on him. I would kind of like to see Jordan Wicks maybe take Colin Ray spots a couple times. I know there's been some talk about maybe taking a Cade Horton start or 2. I don't want to see that right now. Cade Horton's coming off of his worst major league start on Friday.
It was bad against Houston.
It was bad. It was bad start. He was so he's from Oklahoma, right? That's where he's from. He grew up in that area. I have a feeling, and I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling he probably had a lot of friends and family in attendance in the game in Houston. That's kind of in his backyard. I would not be surprised if Cade Horton grew up an Astros fan. Based on the region.
You're going to have those as a rookie too. Like Chase Burns just got rocked for Cincinnati on Monday.
Oh, and I was at his first start. He struck out the first 6
he was
hitters.
Awesome against the Yankees. Awesome. And then, comes back against Boston. I saw some report that he might have been tipping pitches, but he got rocked against the Red Sox.
Got rocked.
The Cade Horton thing, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible sign. It's like,
no,
you're going to have it. You're going to have it.
Happens.
Yeah,
right,
100%.
He was throwing really hard that night. His velocity was up like a mile and a half over what it had been. So that's why I'm just projecting that I think this is probably an important, meaningful start to him on that end. But I'd like to see him get a couple starts before you start to limit him. But Jordan Wicks, I think, should probably get another look. He's looked pretty good down in the minors. And to finish off with a couple of pitchers, so we'll go pitchers first. Ryan Gallagher, not a great start this week. Another 6 strikeouts, 4 earned runs. Fine start, not great. And then my buddy Kirkpatrick, who I brought up last time, he got in 1 game, struck out 2 more hitters, didn't walk anybody. So just kind of wanted to keep him up on my prospect sicko report. This week, great week. Looking at a couple of hitters that I thought kind of really stood out to me this week. Kevin Alcantara, you already mentioned it. 217 WRC plus, hit 2 home runs, had 2 doubles. Most importantly, 13.6 strikeout rate. With his whiffs on not fastballs, that's been an issue all season. He's like whiffing over 40% on those pitches. If he can get that kind of down, that would be great. He tends to go and somebody had mentioned it on the boards, but Kevin Alcantara in this like mid to late June, this is when he picks it up every year. So he kind of starts off really slow, and then like mid-June hits, and then like he's great the rest of the season. So whether that helps us at the trade deadline or whether it just makes him better, I don't think it matters. But he's having a good time. James Triantos also coming back from injury, had a really big week. He hit 2 home runs. That's not usually like James Triantos to hit 2 home runs in a month, let alone a week. So that was really good. 155 WRC plus, continuously not to strike out. If his batted ball data can be a little bit better, he could work his way either into the trade deadline, or if we talk about guys that we want on the bench, like, are you telling me that James Triantos can't do what John Birdie's doing right now? He's a good runner. He hits the ball a lot. James Triantos is kind of like the bench. He really is. I think if you want to talk about like guys who I don't necessarily project as starters, James Triantos kind of hits that. I just don't think he does enough other than like running well, playing decent defense, and hitting a lot of baseballs and not striking out. But I think he's kind of like your perfect bench guy. Like that's kind of where I see him as like a guy that you can play at second base, a guy you can play at third base, a guy you can play in center field, a guy you can play in left field, a guy you can play in right field. He's not going to strike out. He's going to hit 5 to 7 home runs a season, but he's going to steal a bunch of bases. He's going to not strike out. I think he's got value. So, you want to dump Birdie. I think a healthy James Triantos fits into that role pretty good. And then we're going to finish it off with my favorite game line of the week, which is Ronnie Cruz. For those of you who are unaware of who Ronnie Cruz is a 3rd-round draft pick last year. Kind of a surprise third round draft pick. Wasn't really on a lot of boards. He had recently come over to Miami. He didn't want to be an international free agent. He wanted to go through the draft process. Lanky kid, not great mechanics, but there was like a lot to like. One of the anecdotal stories that kind of came out is that in the fall, they used the Traject system. If you don't know what the Traject system is, it's kind of like a hitting system that can recreate any pitcher, spin rate, and everything like that. And the anecdotal evidence, I think it was BA posted it. The Cubs thought he did better on the Traject system than Cam Smith. So like, it's anecdotal. I don't think it means much, but they liked him on the system as much as they did Cam Smith. Cam Smith's number one draft pick, hit a couple home runs against us. We already talked about him. But my favorite game line, he had a 3-triple game, 3 triples in the complex league.
Crazy.
It's awesome. Those are just lines that you don't hear of. He's really picked it up lately. He only struck out 4% of the time last week, which for him is great. His strikeout rate's down under 20% on the season. He had a home run. He is a kid whose power is there, but we're not seeing it all the time. I do think, and I talked to Matt a little bit about this, and I had misjudged why they are not bringing players up. It's to kind of showcase them against lower level talent, bump their levels up a little bit. I don't think Ronnie Cruz is going to get pulled up yet, but he is somebody who I think is going to be too good for complex league, not good enough for Myrtle. So what we're going to see is I think he's going to go to Myrtle. He's going to look bad there for the rest of the year. Eli Lovich is doing the same thing right now. He needs weight. He's too thin. He's too skinny. He doesn't have it yet. Ronnie Cruz is going through a lot of mechanical changes. I just saw some swing mechanic changes. He's doing a far better job on weight balance, getting himself into good hitting spaces, cutting down a little bit on movement and everything like that. And it's starting to show. I think he's going to be too good for Arizona, the complex league. That's the lowest level. It's like rookie ball. I think he's going to really struggle at Myrtle. That's just a famously difficult place to hit. But I think those lumps are going to be good. He's the kind of guy who I think really takes off next year. Eli Lovich the same way. You add a little bit of weight on these guys, you get them a little bit out of their raw situations. You want to look at like next level guys. This is a guy. And then we're going to go real deep for my last one. And we're going to go to the DSL League down in the Dominican. And we're going to talk about Juan Cabada. Juan Cabada was one of the Cubs' highest IFA players signed. He is 17 years old. He is not coming to Wrigley Field for the next 5 years.
Is this a sicko?
Yeah, this is a sicko prospect. Yeah, real deep cut. But so far in the DSL, 72 plate appearances. He's got 2 home runs. He stole 13 bases. He's striking out under 20% of the time. He has 4 doubles. He is a 5'10", 165-pound second base, third baseman listed. But he's thick. He's got a thicker body. But he's a left-handed swing. I like what I'm seeing out of him down in the DSL right now. This is the kind of guy I would keep my eye on him. He's probably going to spend the whole year in the Dominican. He'll be up with the Arizona Complex League next year, and then maybe we see him in Myrtle by the end of next year. But he signed for over $1 million. He was one of their biggest signings in the IFA list. And I think there's a guy there. So keep the name Juan Cabada like in your back pocket for 2030. When we can maybe talk about him making his major league debut, but he's having a good one. And I like to get into those kind of nitty gritty deep ones as much as possible because I think those are the fun ones and the ones that can kind of pop. He's had a big couple weeks. So just Juan Cabada, put him in your back pocket. The Cubs have not had a big IFA win in a while. Moises Ballesteros was one, Jefferson Rojas was another, but we haven't had one the last couple of years. Guys like Dernish Valdez and Fernando Cruz just really haven't hit the ground running. Don't write them off yet. They're like 17 and they're like 18 and 19. Takes a while, but Cabada's really hit the ground running. And when you see somebody doing that, it's always good to kind of put a feather in them, put a little bookmark and check in every once in a while. So Cabada would be my last one on the minor league report today.
Yeah, it's a good way to put a bow on the show too, that minor league report. Usually we have it somewhere around the middle. That's just kind of how it fell into.
Yeah, and on a positive note for 5 years from now.
Yeah, 100%. As for the Cubbies, 3 against Cleveland this week, 3 against the Redbirds, all 6 at Wrigley Field. One thing that I noticed, Again, we're recording Tuesday afternoon for a Wednesday publish. They play Tuesday tonight on TBS, Wednesday on ESPN, Friday on Apple TV, and Sunday Night Baseball back on ESPN. So there's going to be a lot of three nationally televised games for the Cubs just this week.
Great.
So,
that's
well, for
least
people who
favorite.
live in blackout areas and it's harder to find the Cubs unless you're, using
I
some
live
of
in a
those
I live in a
funky
blackout area,
websites.
but I don't have cable, so
Yeah.
games on TBS are I'm sailing the seven seas.
Yeah.
This is what I'll be doing tonight. The good news about playing the Guardians tonight. They're so bad against lefties too. They're terrible.
We've got
they're one of the
Boyd
worst.
and Imanaga coming at you back to
Yeah,
back.
so should be at least in theory a good week for starting pitching in the Cubs. Because at least to start the week, because they are 27th in WRC plus against left-handed pitching.
They've lost four in a row and have been shut out in 3 of those.
Yeah,
Cleveland.
the offense is scuffling to begin with, and they can't hit lefties. So this is like a really good. It should be a cathartic time. I think somebody said there's a cold front rolling through Chicago tonight too, so wind's going to be blowing in. You've got Matthew Boyd against the team, revenge game, bad against lefties. I'm not a betting person, but if I was, I'd probably put a little bit of money on the Cubs today.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. 3 against the Guardians, who haven't been playing well. The Cardinals are still hovering around there. They're playing decent baseball. They just swept Cleveland in Cleveland. So that's who the Cubs have both this week, the Guardians and then the Cardinals. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire. This has been the Northside Baseball Podcast. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.